this particular mare that I just shared, I think it was the video this morning or recently in the last couple of days, of showing me in a round pen with her, is a great example that I like to use to counter what I see so much of the time of what people having a perception as to what groundwork is. I find for a lot of people, they tend to weaponize what they are doing on the ground with the horse in the sense of they create patterns, they create routines, they create a constant driving sort of communication towards the horse where they're constantly changing them with some sort of pressure. They're constantly forcing that horse into, I'm going to say, a degree of flee or very quick responses, but very little thinking is happening in the horse. It's more about teaching a reactivity in the horse and an obedience in the horse and a compliance in the horse, rather than seeing the opportunity of working with the horse from the ground is actually, we'll say, the opening conversation starter to prepare for the upcoming ride. And so for me, when I'm showing videos of working with horses from the ground, it's to help show what is possible, or what as I call a conversation, can look like with the horse when we are creating a safe place for that horse to express themselves in a reasonable manner. And this is something that I don't see very much of. I see that people have been taught to have like a premeditated task or a plan or a certain way of doing things, and that they are going to impose that irrelevant of wherever the horse is mentally, emotionally, and physically in that moment. And there's no consideration for what the horse is experiencing. There's no recognition as to if the horse is able to think through things. If the horse does offer what I call counter offers, or where they come up with different behaviors than what was requested by the human, there's often a huge amount of critique and constant pressure and driving and chasing to teach that horse a lesson, if you will, that you'll see in a lot of these videos that people try and share, going, look at, this is how you round pen a horse, and this is how you do groundwork with a horse. And instead, for me, when I'm watching these videos, all that I'm seeing is humans teaching the horse to be fearful of the human experience. And so if every time we're interacting with the horse, we are triggering them to be in a fearful state, the first thing we have to ask is, how much are they actually retaining if they're in a fearful state during our interaction? And they're not going to be able to retain anything other than how to avoid having more pressure imposed upon them. And this is where a lot of times people will say, well, just keep doing the same pattern, and then that horse will quit resisting or quit avoiding or quit whatever it is that they've come up with. And so people will do the same thing over and over and over. And eventually it does seem like the horse reaches a degree of compliance, until the moment that something is changed by the human in how the interaction is presented. Maybe it's the location, maybe it's when something is asked, maybe it's how something is asked. And that horse, who seemed like they were suddenly understanding previously what was being asked of them, you will see completely melt down, or they will become dysfunctional, or they will become fearful and fleeing. And this is where people go, but we've practiced so much. How come my horse doesn't, he should be fine with this. We've done it a million times before, maybe in a different location or in a different arena or different whatever the scenario. And this is where I try to remind people, if the only thing you have done is taught your horse a conditioned response, then you must keep the conditions the same. Meaning, if you have taught your horse to respond in a certain way, in a certain location, in a certain manner, he's going to respond that way as long as you don't change the location or how or what it is that you're asking of him. But you haven't actually taught him to be mentally present, to be thinking, to be mentally directable towards your input. Meaning, let's say he is distracted in his thought, or he's avoidant in his thought, or he's checking in with his buddies back in the pasture. Do you have room to influence where his focus is before you ask for his movement? And this is where a lot of people will go, well, no, but just make him go forward and just, keep moving his feet, and then eventually you'll get his mind. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when we're dealing with 1,100-pound prey emotional animal. If all we're doing is chasing and critiquing the horse, and he's experiencing distraction, avoidance, fear, any of those sort of things, and all we're doing is saying, make him move, make him move, make him move. So we're using pressure to communicate, adding to his already fearful or defensive state. We're again reinforcing a distrust towards us and our communication. We're not helping him learn. We're not helping him to let go of whatever else he has come up with or whatever else he is focused on. We haven't helped him release his physical tension. We haven't helped him become more confident or more trusting or more willing. And this is where I see a lot of I'm going to say holes in people's horsemanship come up, because for a lot of people, when they're taught to work with the horse, it is done from an ego-based context, I'll say. So you better teach that horse a lesson. You better teach that horse who's boss. You better keep doing it until that horse complies. And, it's kind of this rote behavior that really is just teaching the horse how to be more mentally and then eventually physically avoidant during the interaction earlier and earlier. I see this a lot where people will say, when I first bought my horse, he was easy to catch and I could do all these things with him. And now I've had him for a few months or maybe a few years and I've been doing more and more. And it seemed like it was going fine. But now, he's kind of harder to catch. And now that I've been hauling out more, he's kind of harder to load in the trailer. And now he seems to be more stuck on one of the buddies in the herd. And, and you start seeing this kind of, I'm going to say slow, we'll say deterioration of what seemed like a trained and confident or willing horse when we first got them or we first started interacting with them. And what people are missing is what is the human influence that is creating these unwanted responses in the horse. So for a lot of people, there is this assumption that when they communicate something, the horse should automatically respond as they've commanded without ever stopping first to look at themselves and say, what was it that I wanted to communicate? How did I communicate it? Do I have adaptability in my energy? What was the timing of my communication? Did I address the horse's feedback? Did I help him let go of physical tension? Was I able to follow through until the horse could then mentally check in and then I could ask him whatever it was that I wanted in the first place? Or did I just stay fixated on the task of what I was asking, keep asking the same thing in the same manner, in the same way, ignoring whatever the horse's counteroffers were, and then critique him when he couldn't figure out what it was or he didn't offer what it was that I wanted? And these are the sort of gray area communication that I find a lot of people find themselves in with their horse. A lot of people kind of have gone through the motions, or maybe they haven't really thought about assigning value to, I'm going to say, the basic interactions, such as what is the quality of catching your horse? What's the quality of leading your horse going through the gate, taking him to wherever you tie him? What is the quality of tacking up when you go to mount him? Looking at all these little bits and pieces, because for a lot of folks, that's not really the important stuff. That's not the big stuff, or it hasn't been a fearful experience for them.